And from Columbus, Ohio, I'm your host, Robb Dunewood.
And coming out of Philly, it's your girl Tech Life Steph.
And out of Atlanta, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech, aka powered by StreamYard. I don't know for all the watchers who are watching us on video. Looks like we moved over, and clearly, StreamYard is sponsoring this podcast, but not really.
They need to be. I mean, StreamYard, holla at us. Shoot.
What's going on, y'all?
We're chilling. Can't complain.
So I have had the opportunity to look at Twitter comments, and I know I shouldn't get sucked into them, but and this is not even a tech story. So this is just a conversation that we're having because I didn't realize how bad this was. But your boy over at Twitter, he just like killed some killed some APIs that companies have been using for 16 years and with no notice. And so I'm looking at these companies like Tweetbot and Twitterific. They're literally just shutting down because they just are. I don't want to say arbitrarily. I want to be precise in my language. I think it was always in their terms of service that some of the things these companies were doing were not necessarily okay. But the fact that you allowed companies to do stuff a certain way for 16, 17 years, and then you just say, oh, we're enforcing that rule, and you don't even give them any notice. And it's just like, I keep telling folks, Stephanie, you've been saying this for the longest time. It's like playing with fire when you mess around with, with Twitter. So
not just that, what's the old saying? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yes, that is the saying.
Contingency plan in place. I hope they had a plan B. I hope they was doing something, just sitting around waiting for the axe.
Yeah, stay ready so you don't got to get ready. I think that stems from which is one of my favorite quotes from Whitney Young Jr., civil rights leader from back in the day, where I think I'm quoting this right, where he says, it is better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. So yeah, this is, I hear a lot of folks saying things like, you cannot play in someone else's sandbox and then be upset when they change the rules. I hear that, but having been a developer for a number of years, there are ways that you treat your development community. There are ways that you do things. Even if you have developers who have found a loophole and are doing things that you don't necessarily want, you don't just pull the rug out from, well, I guess you can. You just probably shouldn't pull the rug out from under them.
Well, there are ways you treat your developer community, and then there are ways Elon Musk treats a developer community. That's a whole different conversation. So and we already know what it is.
So everything that we have talked about Twitter before, and yes, we will start the show here in a second, but everything that we have talked about Twitter before has really been from the end user standpoint and how end users feel and this and that and the other. But you have now basically made it clear to developers that they can't trust you. And big companies like Twitter, and I'm just going to say social media companies, social media companies like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, which I guess is also Facebook, and Snapchat. And I'm trying to think of all of them. Reddit. I mean, all these different companies that are in the social media space that have a developer community, you do not want to, I don't want to say you don't want to be on their bad side, but you don't want to be on the side of where they can't trust you, because all they do at this point, all the development that's happening right now, as far as Twitter is concerned, is how can we hack it? Not saying that people are trying to, be vindictive and go back at it, but that's all that's happening. I don't want to say that it isn't increased. It's, people have always been trying to do that. But there were organizations that were literally trying to make the platform better by using what they had and coming out and, and building these clients that, end users wanted to use. That just dried up. So you just don't have that level of talent working on your stuff anymore. And that doesn't mean they're not going to work. They're just going to go work and do other stuff and hate you while they do it.
True,
so
there's a
Go ahead, Steph.
There's a really good article that came out on Wired today called "The End Shitification of TikTok," and the subtitle is "Or How Exactly Platforms Die." And it goes through it before it even gets to TikTok. It talks about Amazon and Twitter and Facebook and different platforms and how the sort of model for these platforms is to capture the users, do a user grab, get as many people on the platform as possible. Once those people are sort of held hostage to the platform because now there's a billion people and all your friends are there and there's nowhere else for you to go, then the platform starts shitting on user base in favor of the developer base or the seller base or whatever that next level, but then eventually they start shitting on that community as well, and then that brings on the demise of the platform altogether. And I mean, it sounds like Twitter is just sort of following the blueprint for that. It's a really good article though. It's long though, I didn't finish it all the way, but their sort of life cycle for internet platforms tends to sounds like it follows a pattern, and it sounds like Twitter is just following that pattern.
Yeah, drop that link in our show notes, and when I post it, it'll go up tomorrow, and we can talk about it. Because this we didn't even have this in our rundown. It's literally just something that I'm looking at, like my Twitter feed as we're doing the show, and it's like, dag, people are. I mean, they're going hard at Twitter, right now over this. That being said, let me go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, name a platform, name a software, name a hardware that you can think of off the top of your head to where the platform or the software or the company said, we've got this thing. If you want to make a better one, go do it. Think of like Facebook. Is there like a Facebook clone out there that people use that's just like Facebook and pulls all the Facebook data, but it's different? Think of Instagram. Think of WhatsApp. Not competitors, but like, has somebody said, you know what, WhatsApp is nice. We're going to take the same data. We're going to take the same user information. We're going to do something a little bit different. All that to say, I'm surprised that these companies didn't say, the CEO, the leadership is different. What's our contingency plan? You know what I'm saying? So while you can be hot all you want to be, and you could, kind of, do whatever, it's just like, as a business, your concern should be the business, regardless of what it is. And if something like this, something so trivial were to come along, because this is very trivial. I'm not saying I'm not in favor of Elon Musk doing it at all. I think it's kind of lame for him to be doing it. But at the same time, as a business, I don't want to be like, oh man, our whole business failed because somebody flipped the switch.
Yeah. So
we just real quick, a lot of folks in the comments are saying they can't hear Terrance. Just FYI.
Oh, you know what? Probably because let me
tap your mic. You're not using the right mic.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. All right, hold on. Let me switch it. Oh, of course not. Yeah, y'all go ahead and talk amongst yourselves.
No, I got the time. We'll clip this.
But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it doesn't sound like this is any different than any other platform. It does boggle the mind as to why these platforms weren't necessarily prepared. But I mean, I guess to sort of play devil's advocate against what you just said, Terrance, I guess you should be prepared to pivot and understand that these things could happen. But when you build your platform around this other platform, that kind of that's it. And if the platform goes away or the platform changes, then you have to be prepared for sort of a catastrophic event and be ready to just pack up and go home, basically.
Yeah, so some of the companies have changed their focus to other things, other development, because they're not. I don't want to say that these applications were the only things they were working on, but they were the biggest things they were working on. But I think in multiple cases, folks were working on Mastodon clients and stuff like that. So they're doing other things. And to Terrance's point, and many people have pointed this out, and I don't think the argument is this for a lot of folks. Twitter was completely within its rights to do exactly what it did. No one is arguing at that point. The point that people are arguing is that you had development companies, you had people developing on this API the way they've been doing it for 16 years. And you finally decide to enforce the letter of the law without any notification. It's kind of a D move to just do that. Yeah, you can.
That's the way to ball bounces sometimes. So, this is like if you weren't so single threaded and I mean, it sucks, but I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for.
I do. I have sympathy for the fact that you've got people who they were building applications that, like I said, it was a relationship that benefited Twitter as well. If you look at a lot of the features that are in Twitter, they came directly from what Twitterific was doing. They came directly from what Tweetbot was doing. It's like, oh, that's a good feature. Let's bring that over into our, into our platform. And I've actually seen people say, it's like, oh, well, that really sucks that, Twitter's going to actually in their own platform do the thing that somebody else is doing. It's like, no, you know that when you are building these tools in somebody else's sandbox, they're going to say, oh, that's a good feature. Let's bring that into ours. And I've even seen developers say, yeah, that's kind of the gig. But
and do we not understand capitalism?
Yeah, but for it's like you show up at the sandbox and it's not even that they had a sign up to say the sandbox is closed. It's like Twitter packed up the sandbox and moved it inside the house. It's like you can no longer get to it anymore. It's like, this is done. So, and it's like they didn't have to do that. Twitter, someone knew that this was going to be the ramification. They said, yeah, we don't care. Let's go ahead and do it anyway.
Well, the same way that like we're going to talk about it, but the same way Google just laid all these people off in emails and didn't tell them. So, you know what I mean? Like this is what companies do. Like, I don't know why anybody is surprised that these corporations are acting like corporations and doing whatever the hell. Like, I'm just not sure where your level of surprise and disbelief and I don't know where that's coming from. I just don't know where that's coming from.
I am actually surprised that they made the move without even telling anyone that they were making the move. Now, to go to these companies that are using this API and say, hey, for these reasons, we are shutting this down. You could have done it with very little notice, but it's like they didn't decide to do it the second before they click the end button on the API. Messages could have been sent out. Something could have been done. Is all I'm saying. And other companies that do similar things, they do usually, even when they don't have to, they give that developer community that notification because they don't want those developers turning on them.
Listen,
I guess Twitter is saying we just don't care.
You're pro developer, but this is not, these are not normal circumstances. Like I said, it's not Twitter, it's Elon Musk. And so you have to take that into consideration as well. These are not normal circumstances. So
I know this. I wasn't using any one of these clients because essentially, for those who don't know what we're talking about, there are third-party Twitter clients that essentially Twitter is now outlawed. But there are other third-party applications like Buffer. Stephanie, you use Buffer, right? Or I know you use it.
I use Hootsuite more. Okay. Exclusively, but I don't use any of those anymore. So
so applications like Hootsuite, Buffer, Tweet Hunter, Hype Fury. If I were a developer of one of those companies, I would be sweating bullets right now because even though these apps aren't quote unquote Twitter clients and you aren't directly replacing functionality of Twitter, they do pull tweets.
We can't hear you, Terrance.
Yeah, they do pull tweets into the application. And, and they're not displaying those ads. So I would be shaking, right? It's like, okay, what are we doing? I mean, we would be doing some long hours trying to figure out how do we continue to survive if they come after us next, because there's nothing that indicates that they won't do it. So,
well, I was just going to say the difference is what you said in the beginning was completely replicate and replace Twitter. That's not what Hootsuite, that's not what some of these things do. So they've got a little bit of grace, but at the same time, you see how it went down with these other cats. So Buffer and Hootsuite and some of these other social things that let you pull analytics from Twitter. I would be like, all right, we got some work to do to figure out what happens if this dude decide to flip the switch, so we can be ready.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, that is the unscripted part of the tech, John. We didn't have that. Well,
just
one
more thing about Twitter, real quick. Another thing that came out of this is no longer do you get to see where somebody tweeted from. No Twitter for iPhone, no Twitter for Android, no Twitter for some of these other things. Of course, other things got axed. So if you're using Tweet Terrific, so if you was using Tweetbot, if you're using some of these other ones, none of them now. If you go on Twitter right now and post a tweet from your iPhone, from your Android, from Mac, from whatever the case may be, that no longer appears in those tweets. So I just thought that was interesting as well.
And they made that change a minute ago, but do you have any idea why they've done that?
I don't know. Ask Elon.
You know what? That could have been the foreshadowing. It's like, hey, maybe that was the warning. It's
red flags.
If tweets from your program ain't coming from your program anymore, then maybe you should take that as a hint as to we about to do some other stuff too. So, y'all, the big news over the last week, and this is always big news, is usually when Apple comes out with some new stuff. And they've got new processors, they've got new devices. But Terrance, they did this event a little different. It wasn't the big, the big to-do event. This is more of a recorded message where they kind of just put it out on their channels and said, hey, here's what we're doing. Why don't you tell us about some of the new chips and some of the new hardware coming out from Apple?
So the way Apple announced their new Macs and their new computer chips processors is the way the sculptor or Boston should have announced that MLK statue. They should have did a curated experience with a video to exactly show you how this thing is supposed to look at the right angle, what's in the information, what do we want you to know as a company, and what do we want you to see. So basically what Apple did was they did a series of anywhere from 15 to 17, 20-minute videos of all these new products. What makes this a little bit different is most people assume that Apple's going to do a live event. But this time they just did some videos. So I don't know. Am I frozen? Can you see me?
Yeah, you are frozen.
We hear you, but you are
okay,
frozen.
You can hear me though? Okay. All right. Well, we'll let the video catch up. But like I was saying, this makes it a little bit different because Apple did a presentation, a video, not even a live event where they do kind of like a Tim Cook comes on live and kind of says something and takes to a video.
Well, weren't they supposed to do one, but it got canceled? And this is just them putting out the videos they pre-recorded that would have been in a part of that live presentation or something like that?
Either that, or people are commenting or having a conversation around, is this the future for Apple events? When WWDC comes around, are they going to do a video presentation? When the iPhone event in September rolls around, are they going to do a video presentation? Or are they saying, hey, the hot things are WWDC when they announce the new iOS. The hot things are the new iPhone, the new Apple Watch, the new iPad when those come out in September, October. Everything else, we just do a video. So new MacBook Pros came out, new computer chips came out. They are all video. So I think that's kind of like the question that people want to know is, what is Apple going to do going forward with anything that's not an iPhone, with anything that's not a new iOS?
Wasn't this just the chip announcement though?
Well, we'll go
were the actual devices, were the machines redesigned, or was this just a chip announcement?
Well, if they wasn't redesigned, it was a chip announcement. So the new chips that came out are the M2 Pro and the M2 Max, and they are there to replace the M1 Pro, the M1 Pro, and the M1 Max. These are the new processors, and like I said, Rob put out some quick specs. You get 10 to 12 cores. You got up to 19 GPU cores for the M2 Pro. The M2 Max, you got up to 12 cores, up to 38 GPU cores, and up to 96 gigs of unified memory. So past computers, you were getting like 32. Now with these M2 Max, you can build a computer that has up to 96 gigs of unified memory, which I can't think of anybody that needs all that memory. But if you got the money, I ain't telling you how to spend your money. Overall, like the differences, you're looking at about 20% difference between the M1 chips and the M2 chips. So if you have, like, for instance, I have an M1 MacBook Pro. If I were to spend the extra money, which again, I can tell myself how to spend my money, and I ain't dropping that money. My M1 does just fine. But if you were looking to do an M2 MacBook Pro, you're looking at about 20% of increased performance across the devices. And like you said, Stephanie, they look exactly the same. The M2 MacBook Pros look exactly the same.
And that was my
Yeah.
point about the events, about Apple events. I think because there wasn't an obvious hardware upgrade design wise for this.
You can make
I think
that same
they were
argument.
just like,
Well, I was gonna say you can make that same argument for these iPhones. The last three have looked mighty the same. The Apple Watches, the last three have looked mighty the same. But they do a live event for those joints. I think Apple knows where their bread is buttered.
Yeah, they know where their money's coming from.
And I don't think MacBook Pros are a volume type thing, and they are that's how we started. So we're just gonna keep these computers rolling. But
and I think
money off them iPhones.
I think as far as the events go, Stephanie, to your point, is that when they actually have a new MacBook Pro, because these really are just refreshes. They're taking the old hardware and putting new processors in them.
That was my point. It was like we didn't get new hardware. We just got new chips. Which
not for the MacBook Pros, which I just talked about. Not for the Mac Minis. They also did a new Mac Mini with the M2 chip as well. But something that's on here that we did get. Well, I'll take that back. Not even new hardware for that. I was gonna say the new HomePod. It's the same HomePod as the original one that they announced. It's just like a couple $100 cheaper, and it's got additional sensors. So to answer your question in its entirety, no, Apple did not announce new hardware redesigns. They just announced these new chips. So maybe that's the reason why Apple said, we'll just give them a video.
Right.
Now, here is one thing that is significant with the new Mac Mini. Well, yeah, because I guess these are new Mac Minis because it's $100 cheaper.
And they do have additional ports on these.
The Mac Mini Pro does have 2 additional Thunder ports, so it is physically different than the old one. But what's really getting me is that these things started now $600, and if you're a student and get the educational discount, you're talking about $500 for a Mac. That you can't. I don't want to say you can't buy a better PC for that money. It's going to be difficult to buy a better PC for that money. Like I said, I'm certain somebody who listens to the show said, I can go put one together for less than what that would cost. But yeah, you had to put the sweat equity into actually building it yourself. This is one where I can walk to Best Buy, Walmart, or the Apple store and just get one.
Right.
For $500.
No, I agree. I actually, for like half a second, because I'm a PC girl. I'm an iPhone girl, but I'm also still a PC girl. I actually considered for half a second that Mini. I was like, man, that Mini might not be a bad idea, but I would have to get yet another monitor, because right now my configuration is I have a ginormous HP all-in-one plus a secondary Dell monitor to do the whole 2 monitor, extend setup. So I would have to get another monitor. And it just, I'm just like, that whole transition into the Apple ecosystem fully is I'm still just sort of delaying that process as much as possible. And the Mini only comes with a maximum of 2 terabytes hard drive. You can only get up to 2 terabytes on the Mini, which probably is fine, but I think I would want a little bit bigger hard drive, the option to have a little bit bigger hard drive.
So I can't even remember who asked me. Somebody recently asked me in our group, in our Discord, what did I do? Because I had been talking about months ago, I was thinking about getting the M1 Mac Mini, and I never did it. My daughter ended up, my daughter got a new Mac. She passed her old one down to me. So I basically got like a 5-year-old MacBook Pro.
Right.
That is a wonderful device. It does exactly what I need it to do. As a secondary device, it is not my primary driver. That being said, these things are now getting so inexpensive to where it's like, But you're right, because I thought about the same thing. It's like I just go pick one up, get my daughter's educational discount. She's still in school. $500 for this. Get the.
I don't need another. I don't need another laptop, and I definitely don't need to spend $2,400 for another laptop at this point in my life. But I was like, a new desktop. Like I said, to start getting myself into the Apple ecosystem. I don't know, maybe.
So I'm not 100% certain that I have a. I don't know if you can hear that, but I have a tactical, not a tactical. I have a tactile keyboard. I think it will work on a Mac, but I would have to go check to make sure.
They do.
But I definitely would have to get like a KVM. The monitors that I have, I wouldn't need to change them, but I would need to get something to be able to very easily switch back and forth over. So that's probably like another couple $100 to do that. I would definitely want to get like like one of the touchpad things for Macs if I was going to do it. I kind of want to get one of those anyway, for using this MacBook Pro. And I'm like, by the time I get done, I have just now built a new PC. Literally, I have a whole nother set of PC stuff. So I'm going to just roll with my daughter's old hand-me-down MacBook Pro. Like I said, it runs the few applications that I need to run on a Mac on it just fine, and kind of go. But like I said, I look at this, I'm like, man, these things are relatively inexpensive. And last year, I had a bunch of nieces and nephews that went off to college, and everyone that I know, they still think of me as the computer guy, and they ask me, hey, what should we be getting such and such to go to college?
Right, let me send this invoice right quick, and then I'm gonna do this research and get back at you.
in almost every instance, it was get them a Mac, because in the case of my daughter, my youngest, she could care less. As long as I can run, as long as I can run Google Docs on it and stuff like that, because that's what she's grown up using. She says she didn't care what she got. My nephew, same way. My other niece, she was already using the Mac, so it wasn't a thing for her. So I have never recommended Macs before, but I've started doing that because it's just like for what you're going to get for the price. This is a really, really good, solid device. When you get support on it, support is, Apple Care is great on these devices. I have used it on a couple occasions. So $500, like I said, $500 with a discount. That is, why would you buy a PC when you can get a Mac, with this processor in it for the same money? Like I said, for folks who are building their own PCs, you're excluded from the conversation. For people who are just going to go to Best Buy and buy something off the shelf, this might be one of the best $600 pieces of hardware that you can get.
Yeah.
So
I don't disagree.
So, Terrance, you went away for a second, but you came back. But you were saying there was something about the HomePod.
Oh no, I was thinking out loud. Stephanie was mentioning there was no new hardware. And technically, no, there was new hardware. It's just a bunch of inside tech spec bumps. And I was like, well, no, they announced the HomePod. I'm like, nope, it's the same, not the same. It's the same design as the original large HomePod. When they first announced the large HomePod, they were having a bunch of issues with it. They wouldn't pair. If you bought two, one, it was mad expensive. I think there was like $400 when they first came out. And if you bought two, they were having stereo pairing problems. They were having problems. They was damaging people's tables. Like if you had a nice wood coffee table, something about the bottom of it was making a ring, right? Right. So they had a lot of
bullshit right there.
right. So they was having a lot of problems, and then they finally decided to discontinue the HomePod in 2021, I want to say. And then what they did was they came out with the HomePod Mini, which is the one that kind of competes against the Echo,
little nugget looking one. Yeah,
right,
little
right.
What am I trying to think of? Not nugget, but like pellet kind of one.
Yep. Yeah. So that's supposed to compete against the entry level Echoes, the Amazon Echoes, the entry level Google Nest. It's $100.
That Echo Dot is the one that would
and it's $100. So that's the one that sold like hotcakes. But then, it sounds like, well, me personally, as a Apple fan, as an audio fan, I was looking forward to something that is a little more whole house audio versus kind of like a personal assistant in every room. The HomePod Minis are fine with the sound, but if I'm like having friends over, if I want to listen to some music while I'm cleaning up, want to crank it up, something like that, the HomePod had a place. So I guess Apple decided to bring it back. So they've got this new HomePod. It's $100 cheaper than the original one that came out. It looks the same, has a more of a nicer interface for Siri. So instead of in addition to just talking to Siri to do like if you got HomeKit, if you want to check the weather, things like that, the touch interface on the top is a little more what's the word, responsive, a little, gives you a little bit more features, but other than that, it's the same design, just better insides, better interface, has a couple sensors. It has like a temperature sensor. So instead of previously, if you didn't have a temperature sensor, you'd have to be connected to like a smart thermostat to find out what the temperature is without looking. Like if you just said, hey, what's the temperature in the room? With this, you don't have to have it attached to a smart thermostat. It has a temperature sensor in it, and it has a humidity sensor. Again, I'm not a sister, so I ain't worried about my hair and the humidity. But if you need to find out what the humidity is in your room to protect your edges, this new HomePod.
That's important.
This new HomePod can do that. But again, going back to the original point, all the stuff that Apple announced in this curated video presentation or series of presentations is spec bumps, internal upgrades, but no new redesigns, no new colors, nothing special like that.
Stephanie, if I had to go on a limb, I would bet that this is the new way they do their refreshes, because it's got to be a lot less expensive.
I like I said, I just think it's for this one, you wouldn't have gotten journalists to fly out for that. You know what I mean? Just to come and hear about chip upgrades. You know what I mean? So, and I think they knew that. I think they probably had put enough feelers out to, a few folks, and without giving it away, quote unquote, I think they had put enough feelers out to enough folks and knew that they weren't going to get people to come in for that. So
you've had for previous announcements of this caliber that they did have folks fly out for. The folks who flew out said, you could have put this in a video and sent me something under embargo, and I would have still wrote what I was going to write.
Right.
So that might just be them saying, yep, and it saves us money too. So,
but knowing people,
exactly.
But knowing people, if Apple starts doing this on the regular, again, not counting the WWDC where they announced the new iOS, not counting the new iPhones, if everything else is a video presentation, I guarantee these tech bloggers, these tech outlets are going to be writing these long think pieces about the death of Apple events. And I remember a time where nostalgia, and we all hang out as press nerds to kind of talk
absolutely.
About. Like,
but and it'll come back around, and then there'll be some huge live event. I mean, I think this probably plays into our next story about all the layoffs and things like that. I think right now tech is shrinking, for all intents and purposes across the board, as far as personnel, budgets, spending, marketing, advertising. Like, I think tech is just shrinking right now. It's in a contraction phase, or a bear phase, if we're using Wall Street terms. We're in a bear phase. So I think this goes along with that idea that we got to start cutting back. And this is just the start of that. I think we're going to see a lot more of this across the board, you know, with every company. So,
which is appreciated. If Apple decided, you know what, we're going to cut back on some of these in live events, do this video, save some money so we don't have to lay people off, we'll do that.
Well, they're not going to do that neither. They're not going to say they're doing both.
Well, they can make an argument saying, oh, we're cutting back, and the evidence of that is smaller events or whatever, versus Google and Microsoft and them. They're just like
slashing prices.
Look, it's a good lead in, Stephanie, because we'll just go ahead and get into it right now. And I don't want to jinx Apple, but they're like the big tech company that hasn't done riffs yet. So I don't want to jinx them. But they haven't come yet. But this one here, big tech layoffs continue into 2023. So last week, let's start with Google was set to lay off 12,000 employees. Microsoft set to lay off 10,000 employees, and Spotify today announced it's laying off 6%, of its force, this morning. They just announced it today. What is today's date? Monday, the 23rd. So this is continuing to happen. And it's very visible, because when you hear a company like Microsoft just laid off literally thousands upon thousands of people, Google doing the same thing. We heard it with Amazon, a month and a half ago. We heard it with, Uber. We just hear company after company, these big tech names that are doing this. So what do the numbers actually bear out? If you go back to 2022, there's about 70,000 layoffs as far as these big tech firms are concerned. Now, let's just say that number is twice that, because there's a bunch of little companies that we've never heard of that didn't make the news. But let's just say if we want to, be generous with the numbers, let's say that it was 140,000, but 70,000 from the big companies that we know about. Let me put this disclaimer out there. For anyone who has been laid off, this is devastating news for you. So I'm not making light of your personal situation, because there's a whole lot of folks who, like I said, Spotify today, folks finding out that they no longer have jobs. You go to Google last week, Microsoft last week. I want to say that one of these companies, the way that people found out last Friday was that they literally went to work, and if their badge worked, they were still there.
They still had a job.
And if it didn't work, they were out of a job.
Well, and that was the same thing at Google. There were people that were saying, they didn't check their email
at 3 o'clock
Friday after 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And then, so they didn't realize Monday morning they weren't going to have a job to go to. And,
right.
That's the kind of thing to me, like we had that whole conversation at the beginning of the show about developers and Twitter, listen, that is what it is. You knew what the policy was, and you knew there was a chance that policy might get enforced at some point. This is different. You know what I mean? You don't do that to people and their livelihoods, where you literally aren't telling folks, until the last minute. Yet, if I don't give you 2 weeks notice, then I'm the bad guy, and I don't get a reference, and I'm, blackballed in the industry and all the rest of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Crazy. Like it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
Well, this is how that companies are going to do what companies are going to do, and that is
what they want to do.
In almost every case is going to be about making the money. This is just bad optics, Microsoft. You lay people off, but the day before you lay people off, you have a private concert with Sting in Davos for all your executives. It's like you didn't think that Earth was going to hear that, and it's just an opportunity to make you look bad in doing what you're doing. Now, so like I said, you should have no. You should not be disillusioned to think that this is not what's going to happen. This is what companies are not going to do these kind of things. They are. We'll talk about the ones who don't, that do something different, but there's so few of them that those conversations are far and few in between. But it's like, you can't have a private concert with Sting, and Sting is a bad boy. He's a bad boy by himself. He was a bad boy with the police, but you don't have a private concert with Sting that probably cost you $250,000 to $500,000. And then the next morning you lay off 10,000 folks. That's just not a good look. It's like, could you have, like, they knew they were going to do the riff probably days or weeks before they actually pulled the date, pulled it. It's like, oh, we got this conference coming up. Maybe we should wait until the following week. It's like, at some point, you just got to
had the nerve to be doing interviews talking about quiet quitting back earlier this fall when people was just doing what was required. You know, this is not.
It is. It's really ridiculous, and it's just indicative of capitalism, basically.
So
capitalism at its finest.
The reason I put this story in our rundown is because I actually got a question from somebody over the week, over the week who said, so, hey, it's like with all these layoffs that are happening, is now still a good time to go into IT? So as I said, for the individuals, and there are tens of thousands of them at this point who have been laid off, this absolutely sucks for you. And I'm not making light of your personal situation, but when we look at the macro, when we look at the industry as a whole, a couple things. Layoffs hit different if you've been around for a minute. So, I went through the, actually all three of us went through the initial .com bubble back in, or, what was that, 99, 2000.
But see, I didn't. I was waiting for you to get to this part. Because I stayed my ass at Lockheed. I used to work for Lockheed Martin. For anybody that doesn't know, I was a systems engineer for Lockheed Martin. And I stayed my ass there. And I can still remember very, very vividly, like literally probably 95% of my friends, 97% of my friends that ran to those .coms when, all the LimeWire and what was the main one with the boy, the music downloads?
Napster,
like when all of those companies came up, and I mean, internet startups was
popping
up.
Pet.com. I'm so
popping up. They was popping up like weeds everywhere, and they was paying. Don't get me wrong. They almost got me because they was paying, and people were getting double and triple what I was making at Lockheed, and but it wasn't even a year. I don't even think it was 18 months before all them people was right back at Lockheed, and I was just like, I'm so glad I did not leave this job. So I got to be groveling to get back up in here and uprooting my life again. Cause a lot of the people I live, I'm in the Philadelphia area, the greater Philadelphia area. And there were enough companies, enough .coms in this area that a lot of people didn't actually have to move to go take advantage of these new jobs. But a lot of people did, a lot of people uprooted their whole lives.
This is 2000. So this is way before
relocated, did all the things
from the crib.
Exactly. And it was just like you had to move and be out. And I'm telling you, it wasn't even 18 months. And all these people was back because these companies had folded. And, once the dust settled and everything was everything, I was like, Holy Spirit was like, Steph, stay your behind at that good salary job with some good benefits and just chill for a minute and see what happens. And when I tell you all them people was back inside of 2 years, it was crazy.
Again, like you said, Rob, not to make light of people going through this right now, but hopefully this takes the mask off of corporations and how they do business and how they, stay in the black and how they meet their bottom line and how they treat employees. Hopefully people will, not necessarily, get hip to the game, but these companies are going to look out for their best interests.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, all day,
as you, an employee, should be looking out for your best interests. And companies will tell you all day long, we're a family. Companies will tell you all day long that we care about company culture. Companies will tell you all day long they care about loyalty, and your dedication will show up, and take that with a grain of salt. And if it aligns with what you are trying to do as a person, then it aligns. If it don't align, don't feel like you got to be beholden to this company because X, Y, and Z stuff in the company mission, stuff in the company vision, and then their charge or charter or whatever. That stuff don't mean nothing when it's time for them to either they're going to go into black or they're going to go into red, and they're going to go into black, and you are going to be kicked to the curb if that means they got to stay in the black. So I mean, hopefully it just people are wisen up and are more smart about the decisions that they make, and what you do as a job title and where you work should not be who you are. A majority of who you are, your value. You should have values. You should have, hobbies. I don't know. A lot of people get wrapped up into what they do at their job and what company they work for. And I think this will wake people up to say, hey, you know what? I am more than just this job. I'm more than just this title. I'm more than just this company. So when these things do happen, it's messed up, but you know what? I'll pick up the pieces and I'll recover.
Yep. I also this may be an unpopular opinion, but I got to put this out there too, because, we talk about, are there going to be jobs in IT? Are there going to, or tech jobs? Technical tech jobs will always be there, and I get on this horse a lot, because, there's a lot of people out there that are just quote unquote in tech because that was the sexy place to be, and they was paying, and you could get the bag and, go take this 6-week coding boot camp and go get your ass a computer science degree. I'm going, I gotta be, because I did it, and I still hold, in honor the formal education and training, and that's not necessarily needs to be everybody's path, but stop trying to get shortcuts into the tech industry and respect STEM enough in general to be willing to do the work. We need more people. That's why y'all ain't got no jobs. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody, but the people that got computer science degrees are still working. The people that are systems engineers are still working. The people that are software engineers are still working. You know what I mean? So when you're thinking about careers in tech, everybody ain't going to be a systems engineer. Everybody not going to be a software developer. I get it. That stuff is hard, and it requires a lot of work and study and practice, and, years and years that everybody does not have the privilege to have. I understand my privilege in being able to make this statement. However, I still feel very strongly that, traditional core STEM professionals get pushed to the side in this conversation that we've been having about tech and the tech space for years now, because it was sexy to be an entrepreneur, and it was sexy to get venture capital money, and it was sexy to raise a Series A or a Series B. And that's fantastic. But them ain't the ones keeping the tech industry running right now. And they never will be. And so, I got to go out on a limb for my peoples that was in the trenches, getting them degrees and studying and staying up all night, learning how to code and all the rest of that stuff. And if you're looking for an entree into this space, consider that and be willing to do the work. And we need to, and we need to be encouraging our young people that have the capacity to do that, to go ahead and take those steps as well, because, that's where we're falling behind as a community. That's where America is falling behind, as a country, in not having those people that have those actual skills to keep the backbone of the technology industry going. So I'm gonna just get off my soapbox right there.
No, it's a good soapbox. It's a good point. And we talk about that darn near weekly. You bring that perspective all the time, and we weren't going to even get into this, but we'll talk about, we'll have to put this in a rundown for a show coming up. We got to talk about no code tools. Right now is the time. You should not be worried about no code. You should know how to code, because if you want to make sure, it's like, the no code tools have to be coded by somebody who knows code.
Right.
So that's the thing. But I did want to get back to just, some of these statistics that we have here. So as I said earlier, last year, in 2022, we lost 70,000 tech jobs due to layoffs. Those were, once again, they were primarily from the big tech companies that you hear about in the news. Tech postings overall, though, from January to October, we're up 25% year over year for the same time frame. And here is the other thing. I'm gonna actually read this, as I wrote it. The number of tech openings is larger than the number of layoffs by a wide margin. I mean, it's not even close. So we're talking about 70,000 layoffs in 2022. There's like 358,000 open positions in 2022. So
for
just do the math for developers.
Engineers.
Wait a minute, just for developers and engineers.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, let's be split. That's not all tech jobs. When you think about all tech jobs, that number is probably significantly higher than that. Just developers and engineers, 360,000 job openings last year. Here is another thing. We keep hearing about Microsoft and Google and I just lost my train of Spotify, the company that just announced today. These are big tech companies. Most tech jobs are not for big tech companies. People who work in hospitals.
That just speaks to Terrance's point. Yeah. Is being tied to wanting to say I'm a Googler or I'm a black Twitterer or whatever the black people that work at Twitter call themselves, and like everybody has these things and they want that cachet of being able to say I work at this company, and you want to get those perks and the foosball table and all that. You know what I'm saying? You're worried about the wrong stuff right now. Go take your behind to a Lockheed or a hospital or somebody's IT department,
or basically any company with 50 or more employees. I mean, they all have if you are a medium-sized business, you probably spend millions of dollars or more a year on your IT. That is the way of the world. So when we think about it, there's a lot of people who, when you hear Microsoft, yes, Microsoft has hundreds of thousands of employees at Microsoft. But when you talk about people don't realize, if you think about state and local government, if you work in, public sector, that's the biggest job in the United States. Most people who work don't work there, but that is the single biggest employer of people in the country. So when you start to look about, you could literally be working for this company or that company. If it is a large company, a small to medium-sized business probably is going to have an IT department. And in the IT department are people who have tech jobs. And those jobs,
people are probably getting paid more than
they're probably getting paid
90% of people at the company.
They don't necessarily have the stock option. So it may not be a complete compensation package, but when it comes to how much do you make per hour or what is your salary, those folks probably make a little bit more. And we're not hearing about layoffs en masse from those companies. Those companies are the ones we need people. Can we go to this college and set a program up? Can we go to that college and set a program up? Because they need bodies in seats. They know that when you look at the baby boomers who are retiring in mass, another part of this, a lot of people who are getting laid off from these companies are actually asking for it. They are like, hey, can I get that early out? Can I get that 16 weeks and 2 weeks per year? And I've been here 20 years. I'll take that. Let me go ahead and get that and get started on my vacation on my retirement early. But there's a lot of folks who are transitioning out of the IT world more so than those who are coming into it. So you keep hearing all these stories. And I understand, like I said, I want to keep reiterating this. I feel wholeheartedly for the people who are actually being laid off, because you may have been laid off in a place that you were going into, and the job opening requires you to go in some place that's not near where you are. That may require a life change for you. I get that. But there are immense opportunities in the IT world if you have the skills to do the coding, the engineering, and the sales engineering. Those are the big three. It's like every organization that sells stuff is looking for people who can come and talk about it technically. They're looking for people who can come and develop. They're looking for people who can come and support. They're looking for all of these.
You have to take your ego out of the job search. If you're looking for a job in IT, there are jobs in IT. Right. And that's just the bottom line. You just got to take your ego out of it and understand that you may not be working at Google in New York City or in San Francisco or, in the shiny new cylindrical Apple building, or Apple One or Apple Way, whatever. Like that might not be your destiny or your lane. Like just go get a job.
So, y'all, we're going to get to our last story. And Stephanie, when you put this in here, you just put the number 230 and finally fall. And this is how much of a tech nerd I am. I do exactly what you were talking about without having read any articles. So I'm just going to read it and then let you explain what's going on. Will Section 230 finally fall? Should it? Does Section 230 actually protect us? Why don't you tell the people who are not nerds like us what you were actually referring to when it comes to Section 230 and how companies may or may not be able to operate depending on how the Supreme Court decides to go?
Right. So Section 230, first of all, it's a section of the Communications Decency Act that was enacted in 1996. They call it the 26 words that created the internet. Section 230 reads as follows: no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher of or speaker of information provided by another information content provider. So that basically means that the social media platforms of the world, the Vimeos of the world, the YouTubes of the world are not responsible for the content that third-party people provide to the platform. So people like you and me, or publishers, or anybody, any of the content on YouTube is not YouTube's responsibility, basically. It's the responsibility of the person that posted it to the platform. So that is how social media companies and everybody else gets around all of the egregious ass stuff that you can find on their platforms right now. And why this is important is because in 2015, there was an ISIS attack in Paris where a young woman got killed, and her family is suing YouTube because the algorithm recommended more ISIS content to people that are looking for ISIS content. So if you go on YouTube and you type in ISIS, the little sidebar on the side of it will have a whole hella bunch of other ISIS videos. And you know, the family is saying that because these platforms the algorithms recommend more of the same type of content that you've already said you were interested in, that was what was able to indoctrinate whoever it was that did this terror attack that killed their daughter. And so this case is now headed to the Supreme Court next month to be decided, and it may have implications for changing Section 230 as we know it. And will it just be, so the question now becomes, is it just the algorithmic recommendation part of Section 230, or will these platforms now be responsible for all of the content on their platforms? Will moderation policies need to change? Like, what are the ramifications of this? And they're huge. I mean, it will change how the internet operates, I think, altogether, to be perfectly honest, because I've always felt like that the platforms need to be responsible for the stuff on their platforms. The services need to be responsible for the stuff on their platforms. I think the moderation needs to change. You know, when I read this, my solution to it was not necessarily I don't know if this is an overly simplistic view of this. I guess I'll preface by saying that. But I was like, why do you need to recommend anything? That right. was my question. You know, as I'm reading this, I'm like, why do the platforms actually need to recommend anything? I think you could probably get away with returning search terms, like if I search for ISIS, you can show me all the ISIS videos I can stand, but you don't need to recommend more ISIS videos like that. So I was just like, why do you actually need to recommend anything?
Yeah. And I was going to say, you know, I mean, they could make a case simply to a point to where it's like, you don't even have to indicate that you would like to see more videos of these. You could just type iPhone, you know, and then these algorithms have got you locked in with all this content. And before you know it, you feel like, all right, well, YouTube ain't nothing but a bunch of iPhone videos because you can't get out of the
Can't
algorithm.
get out of the iPhone recommendations, right?
Right. So, I could see how, people could make the case that, okay, the algorithm is uh, a force that could have an effect on somebody, how they view things. And as a result, they should be liable in some shape, form, or fashion. If you're not even going to argue the actual content, right? Because I do believe that, the content, but how people find the content should be argued.
Right.
There's a case for that.
Right.
So I have two opinions on this, and they're diametrically opposed to each other. So I'm going to go with the first opinion goes back to there was a time when I actually ran a fairly large website. It was at the time, it was one of the biggest BlackBerry websites on the internet, outranked Research in Motion for certain BlackBerry terms and this and that and the other. It was a pretty popular site. When I had comments on that site, you two would believe, because you're into this, but some of the vile stuff that people would say that had nothing to do with a phone case, a screen protector, what software you can run on your, some of the craziest stuff that people will put out there is like, my goodness, is like, what kind of mind do you have to even write, something like that other people could read it? And I did have spam filters, and over time I got more and more and more, but I got to the point where I just literally had to turn off comments, because it was just, it got to the point to where if I'm going to be liable for this, I just can't do this. It's like, there's too much. It's like, that site, Remarkable, at the height, I probably had, at the height of it, myself and 3 other people who were writing on it, and it was getting like 1.9 million page views a month. And I would literally get tens of thousands of comments on things per month. There's just no way that 4 people can go through all of that. So we had to use, basically moderation. You had to use, things that technically were using AI. They were looking for certain words, and sometimes stuff just got through. Now, we weren't recommending based off of that stuff. That was just what the comments were, until we got to the point to where, like, just tired of this, just turned it off. So from that standpoint, I would not want to be a company that is allowing my user base to create content that's going to go on my platform. And because someone put something out that is against the law, my company now is also in violation of the law. That part, like I said, I hope that they kind of stay with that. If I go to just the other side of my brain and say, you know what, there is opportunity for companies that if they basically just have a, they can post whatever they want. We talked about this last week. Why are companies always looking for loopholes? It's like, if there is a way for you to not be liable for some of the stuff that is the most vile and vicious stuff is going to show up on your platform. If you are going to be somewhat liable for it, then you're going to do what you need to do to make sure that kind of content doesn't appear on your platform. So I don't know how we solve that. I think it's nuanced.
That's different, though. That what you said is not necessarily what the issue is here. Because again, it speaks back to recommendations. And I think the way the companies get around it is you just don't, now granted, the user experience is going to be drastically different, and it's probably going to suck big time, because if I type in iPhone and I get back 1 billion search results for iPhone, and I have to spend 2 hours looking for the actual video that I really, really wanted to see about iPhone, that's going to make my experience, way less. But now we get into, now you just got to ask for, you got to be more specific about what you ask for, the same way Chat GPT, you be very specific and it gives you back something very specific. That's going to make people step up their search term game, basically. But when I search for something, you don't have to show me anything besides what I searched for. You know what I mean? And I think I think you can do that in a way that still removes the liability from the company for the content on the platform without actually serving up objectionable content to somebody. Targeted, yes, targeted and objectionable content to somebody based on something they search for.
So here's my thoughts on that. I believe so let's say that this goes to where companies, you are going to be found liable for what you recommend. There's going to be some type of financial penalty. I think these companies make so much money based off of these recommendations and getting you to view more content and see more ads, that's just how they will start to operate. Okay, well, you know what? Now these ads are going to cost more for our, for our clientele, but we're still going to serve them. And we basically will just pay the fines when our algorithm messes up and and puts the wrong thing out. I truly believe that's what they're going to do. Why? Because money. They make so much money. The reason that they do this, the reason that they make these recommendations is because, they have many PhDs working at these organizations, that all they do is figure out, if we do this, how are people going to react to it? All they are doing is trying to psychologically figure out, what do we have to do to get you to make us more money? That is what their whole departments at Google do this.
I think what they're going to end up doing, though, is make a distinction in the language between what a recommendation is and an ad. Because I think that'll get them around this part of it, what you just said about the money. If it's just a matter, because then if it's an ad, you can put that onus back on the person that paid for the ad. But again, like the recommendations, like I said, if I'm looking at YouTube and that sidebar has 1,000 more, whatever videos, because that's what I search for, that I think that's different than, when I put something in the search bar up at the top and those first three, things that come back are the ads. I think they can make a distinction there. And I think that's how they're going to get around it.
Oh, and that's not exactly what I was talking about. I'm talking about if the companies make so much money off of recommendations of additional content just to get you, to keep you there longer so that you can see more ads. It's not necessarily, if Google is putting out, or whomever is putting out ads for ISIS, then they got bigger problems than what we're talking about here. What's happening, what I think in this particular case, and this happened over in the UK, is that these recommendation engines, or they kept putting out this type of content, and that was what allowed to indoctrinate somebody. I think that they're going to still allow it to happen, because as long as you're watching those videos, there's more opportunities for search engine companies to make money. So I don't know that this is going to get solved anytime in the in the near future. I don't know that. I kind of think that the status quo is kind of going to just kind of stay. They may make some tweaks that you have to get better at it, doing some things, but these companies make too much money.
And because the people making the decisions, I don't think know enough about what's actually happening.
That's what I was going to say.
To make a good deterrent. Like, you got friggin' 80-year-old justices talking about what we going to do about YouTube. Like, they don't know, you know what I mean? So until we get some people that actually know what's going on
in the tubes, So government,
I was saying, the government just as responsible as maintaining the status quo as companies are.
Yeah, they are.
Right. That's why government's so hard to understand in the first place.
So y'all, we are at that time. We actually are over that time. We had a long show today, but it was good conversations. But as we always do at the end of our shows, we want to give shout outs to our patrons and folks who give us raises. So our first shout out goes to Rohan, who became a patron, earlier this week. And so we want to give you your flowers. And we also want to give a shout out to Dee Phillips. Now, I have to admit, Dee Phillips is like a brother to me. This is one of my closest friends. Our children call each other cousin. But he actually gave us a raise. And so I know he will hear this tomorrow. He's a truck driver. He'll hear this tomorrow in the truck. So Big Dee, got to give you your flowers for holding the Tech John down.
Appreciate y'all.
So for anyone else who would like to become a patron of the Tech Jawn, you can head over to patreon.com/the Tech Jawn. That is patreon.com/the Tech JAWN. And we got multiple tiers over there. Any one of those tiers helps support us. And one of the benefits that you get when you if you were to join any one of those tiers is you can actually watch us do the live stream recording of the Tech Jawn and then hang out with us for a bit after the show and what we call our after party. So once again, head over to patreon.com/the Tech JAWN if you would like to support the Tech Jawn. So with that, Tech Life Steph, tell the folks how they can get at you.
All around the web at Tech Life Steph. Follow me. Holla.
And you can find me at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And I am at Robb Dunewood on all the things. And we are also at the Tech Jawn on all the things. And want to just do one little promo for our Discord. We've opened up the Discord to the public. So head over to thetechjawn.com/Discord. And if you want to holler at us over on Discord, you can do that there. So until we meet again in a week's time, peace.
Peace.
Peace.